Hello and welcome to Newsday. We're going to start our coverage from Washington, where the Washington Post newspaper has published a report that claims President Trump revealed highly classified intelligence to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador at a meeting in the White House last week. Well, quoting current and former officials, the paper alleges that Mr. Trump gave information about the Islamic State group that was supplied to the US by an ally that had not authorized its disclosure to the Russians. Well, the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has issued a statement that the president's talks with Sergei Lavrov involved the nature of specific threats, but did not discuss sources, methods or military operations. Well, within the past hour, the Washington Post reporter that broke this story, Greg Joffe, gave me more details.
Trump, in a meeting with the Russian foreign minister and the Russian ambassador, was describing the threat posed by laptops on airplanes with regard to the Islamic State, and disclosed key sort of details from an intelligence partner that were classified and that he shouldn't have shared with the Russians, and that the partner who shared that information with the United States would certainly be upset about.
And you're saying that discussing such matters for somebody in government would actually be illegal?
It's not illegal, in part because the president can choose to declassify anything, but it's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate. Now, we've seen H.R. McMaster deny this. He said that he was in the room and it didn't happen this way. What's your response to that?
Well, I guess would say two things. One would, he said, the president didn't disclose sources or methods, and that's what our story also says. But the nature of the information that the president provided to the Russians would allow them, would allow the Russians to reverse engineer essentially that information to sort of discover the sources and methods. In other words, he said so much that one could figure it out. And then the second thing I would say is, following the meeting, there were messages that went out from the White House, from the NSC, both to the CIA and the National Security Agency, alerting them that this information had been improperly or accidentally disclosed, and to take sort of precautionary measures. So those two things suggest that, clearly something of grave concern happened here.
That was Greg Joffe, who, along with Greg Miller of the Washington Post, broke that story alleging that Donald Trump revealed those highly classified details to the Russian foreign minister. We heard Greg speak about the US National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, there. Well, he has given a statement in the last hour denying those claims.
There's nothing that the president takes more seriously than the security of the American people. The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. The president and the foreign minister reviewed a range of common threats to our two countries, including threats to civil aviation. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed. And the president did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. Two other senior officials who were present, including the Secretary of State, remember the meeting the same way and have said so. Their on-the-record accounts should outweigh those of anonymous sources. And I was in the room. It didn't happen. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
The US National Security Advisor saying he was in the room. It didn't happen. Our Washington correspondent, Rajini Barr joins us now. Rajini, they're going to deny this, aren't they?
They are, and as you had from the Washington Post just then, they're saying that there are other things that show that there was some sort of a leak of information from the president. They reported that you spoke to there, I thought was interesting, pointed out to two other channels. They said the precautionary measures were taken by the CIA and by the NSC in the wake of that meeting. So they're also saying that that is another sign that this did happen, though, of course, it's not just H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, who has said, no, it didn't happen. The White House has also issued a statement from the US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who says they did not discuss sources, methods or operations. And the Deputy National Security Advisor, Dina Powell, has also issued a statement saying that the story is false. The president only discussed the common threats that both countries face. case. But that hasn't stopped the reaction pouring in Washington from both sides of the political aisle. We've heard from Republican Senator Bob Corker, who chairs the Foreign Relations Committee. Some very strong language from him this evening. He's saying the White House has got to do something soon to bring itself under control and order. And he said that the White House was going in a downward spiral right now. We've also heard from Democrats as well, who have condemned this story from the Washington Post, saying that this is a slap in the face for the intelligence community and risking sources is inexcusable. Now, we know that President Trump is not a fan of leaks. He's tweeted in the past that he has no tolerance for leaks. But of course, the White House is denying this story. But of course, it does raise questions about the way that the White House does handle information and, of course, about the president himself.
Well, exactly, and about how much loyalty there is for the president, given that we are now finding out about this.
Well, that's right. This Washington Post article quotes current and former officials in the White House, and they are concerned in this report about the implications of this alleged leak as well. They are worried that it could threaten and jeopardise the relationship that the US has with its intelligence sharing partners, and that is the biggest concern that can come out of this story. Not just that the information may have been shared, but that it might actually have implications and knock-on effects for security and intelligence sharing broadly.
OK, Rajini, well, as always, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on all of that. Rajini Barr, my colleague there in Washington. We will, of course, bring you any updates, any developments on that particular story. But now let's bring you up to date with some of the day's other news. And the news